The bedroom smelled of formaldehyde and roses when the police finally broke down the door in May of 1936. What they found wrapped in cloth beside Vera Hutchins had been dead for 7 years. She was wearing her wedding dress, and the pillow next to the body still held the shape of her head. Before this story, what's the darkest case you've ever heard? Write it in the comments. Let's compare notes. Also, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is right now. We're building a community of truth seekers who aren't afraid of the dark. Now, let's continue. The autumn of 1928 arrived cold and early in the remote valleys of Clay County, Kentucky. Vera Hutchins stood at her cabin window, watching the first frost settle on the mountain laurel when she heard her husband Owen's breathing change. They had been married for 3 years, living in the cabin his grandfather built. Owen was 26, strong from cutting timber, but pneumonia had taken hold with a speed that terrified them both. The traveling doctor arrived 2 days later. He listened to Owen's lungs, which sounded like stones in a bucket, and offered no hospitals within 50 miles, no medicines that would reach them in time. Owen died on October 14th, his hand in Vera's, his last words asking her not to leave him alone in the dark. The doctor returned the next morning to sign the death certificate. He expected to find Vera grieving, perhaps with neighbors preparing the body for burial. Instead, he found the cabin door locked. Vera's voice was firm through the wood. She didn't need an undertaker. She didn't need help. Owen was resting, and she would care for him herself. The doctor, used to mountain ways, left. He noted that grief affected people differently and expected Vera's family would handle the burial later. What the doctor didn't know was that Vera had already begun her work. Her father had been a taxidermist. She had learned his methods since childhood. She knew about formaldehyde, temperature control, and how salt draws moisture from flesh. His old supplies were in the cabin cellar. That first night, with Owen's body still warm, Vera opened the bedroom window wide. The October cold rushed in. She worked by candlelight, her hands steady. She told herself this was temporary. She needed time to say goodbye properly. The ground would be too hard for burial soon, and spring would be better. She whispered to Owen as she worked, promising she would never let him go cold and alone into the earth. The formaldehyde burned her throat as she applied it. She dressed him in his clean Sunday clothes and covered him with their wedding quilt. When she finally lay down beside him, exhausted and hollowed out by grief, she told herself this was just for tonight, just until she was strong enough to let him go. The lie felt warm and necessary in the dark. The mountain wind howled outside, and Vera pressed closer to her husband's shape. She would bury him in the spring. She promised. She slept with her hand on his chest, waiting for a heartbeat that would never come. In the morning, she woke with a new conviction. Owen needed her, and she would not abandon him to the grave. By the summer of 1929, Vera's neighbors began to notice something was wrong. The first sign was at the general store. Vera came every Saturday, looking messier, moving quickly. She bought food in careful pairs, 2 apples, 2 portions of meat, 2 tins of beans. When the clerk, Dolly Krebs, mentioned she was buying enough for 2, Vera smiled a strange, bright smile and said Owen had a powerful appetite lately. Dolly was troubled. Hadn't Owen been buried months ago? But no one had seen a funeral. No one had seen a grave. Dolly made a note in her storybook. The second sign came from Vera's younger sister, Loretta. She visited in June, bringing fresh bread and concern. She found Vera on the porch, blocking the door, speaking in a low, urgent voice like she was arguing. When Loretta asked who she was talking to, Vera said Owen was resting and couldn't be disturbed. He'd had a difficult night. The fever was breaking, but he needed quiet. Loretta tried to push past, but Vera's grip was like iron. Her eyes were wild. He's getting better. Vera insisted. The doctor said it would take time. You can visit when he's stronger. There had been no doctor. Loretta knew this. She left the bread and walked away, her mind racing with terrible ideas. By August, the local preacher, Reverend Silas Drummond, decided he had to help. He'd heard the rumors. He went to the cabin on a Tuesday afternoon. Vera met him before he reached the porch. She was polite but firm. Yes, she was fine. No, she didn't need help with a burial because Owen was recovering. That pneumonia had been bad, but her nursing had saved him. He was weak, but improving daily. She spoke with such detail that the Reverend was almost convinced. Vera, he said gently, I was told Owen died last October. Her face hardened. People talk without knowing. Owen was very sick, near death, but I wouldn't let him go. He's still weak, but he's here with me. The Reverend asked to see Owen, to pray with him. Vera's refusal was absolute. Owen was too weak for visitors, maybe in a few months. She thanked him and walked back to the cabin, ending the talk. Reverend Drummond was deeply unsettled. He spoke to the county sheriff, Howard Gentry, suggesting someone check on her. But the sheriff was busy with other crimes. He said mountain people had a right to their privacy. Unless someone reported a real crime, he couldn't do anything. Throughout the autumn of 1929, Vera was almost completely alone. She stopped going to church. She only went to the store for the bare minimum, always buying for two, always talking like Owen was there. Neighbors passing the cabin heard her voice through the walls, sometimes singing, sometimes talking, sometimes reading the Bible. The worst report came from a traveling repairman in November. He knocked and heard Vera call out, "I'll be right there." But before she opened the door, he heard her speak to someone inside. "I'll only be a moment, my love. Stay warm under the blankets. I'll bring you something hot when he leaves." The man saw no one else when Vera opened the door a crack. He saw a woman with too much determination in her eyes and too little sleep. Her smile was bright and terrible. Her hands were stained with something dark. He left quickly and never went back. By December, Vera had stopped explaining anything. She just lived in her cabin with the windows shut. Inside, the bedroom stayed cold, the body stayed preserved, and Vera's devotion stayed absolute. She was on a path she couldn't leave. The long winter would only make her belief stronger. If this made sense, tap subscribe. Next one is even better. The routines became serious during the winter of 1930. What was preservation became something worse, a daily habit Vera followed like a religion. Every evening, she would enter the bedroom with water, cloths, and her father's old grooming kit. It took hours. She did it with the care of a bride getting ready. First, she unwrapped him. Owen's body, now dead for over a year, was wrapped in linen soaked in preservatives. Vera would take off each layer, looking at the skin underneath. The formaldehyde and cold had worked. The body had mummified. The flesh was tight like old leather. Where hair fell out, she saved it in envelopes. She spoke to him constantly. "Do you remember the church social where you first asked me to dance?" She would whisper. "You stepped on my foot 3 times. I knew then you were the one." She changed his clothes every week. She kept all of Owen's shirts and pants. She dressed him carefully. When his joints wouldn't bend, she cut the seams of his clothes and sewed them back on him. The look of normal life was what mattered. The makeup was the most disturbing thing investigators would later find. Vera had ordered rouge and lip stain from a catalog. Each night she put color on his sunken cheeks, trying to make him look alive. She painted his lips pale pink. She darkened his eyebrows. It looked grotesque. But in the dim lamplight, Vera saw only her husband's face. The sleeping arrangement finished the routine. Vera would position Owen in the center of the bed, propped on pillows. She had sewn his mouth shut months earlier when his jaw began to open. Then she would put on her nightgown, blow out the lamp, and get into bed beside him. She pressed against the stiff shape, her arm over his chest. The smell didn't bother her anymore. She thought it was just the medicine keeping him alive. In the dark, she would whisper to him about her day, about their future, about the children they would have when he recovered. "I know you can hear me," she would murmur. "I know you're trying to come back. Just hold on. Don't leave me here alone." The clearest proof of her broken mind was her diary. She wrote as if Owen were part of their life. "Owen and I had breakfast together. Owen seemed stronger today. Owen held me close last night." But sometimes she wrote other things. "Sometimes I think I see things that aren't there. But Owen assures me I'm doing everything right." These moments of truth never lasted. By spring, she believed Owen talked to her in dreams. She would wake and write his messages. The dreams told her to seal the bedroom windows with tar paper, saying Owen needed dark to heal. She became obsessed with the room's temperature. The mattress underneath them was permanently stained. She covered the stains with more sheets and quilts, building a nest of cloth in denial. The isolation helped her. Fewer visitors meant fewer questions. Fewer questions meant she could keep living in the world she built. In that cold, chemical-smelling bedroom, Vera Hutchkins had made a marriage that even death could not end. By the summer of 1931, the whispers in Clay County were too many to ignore. The mail carrier, Curtis Brennan, was the first to officially report his worries. On his road, he heard singing at strange hours, lullabies, but with a desperate edge. Once arriving early, he heard Vera talking through the door in 2 different voices. One was her normal voice asking a question, then a pause, then a deeper voice that she was clearly making herself, giving an answer. She was having both sides of a conversation with Owen. The postmaster, Edgar Vance, listened with worry. He had his own problems with Vera's mail. She sent letters to Owen's mother in Virginia. Edgar had to mark them undeliverable because the mother had died 3 years earlier. He opened one. It described a happy home. Owen's recovery plans to visit. It was dated 1931, nearly 3 years after Owen's death. Edgar filed his notes in a drawer. The Great Depression was bad, and there were no resources to check on strange widows. The general store was another source of worry. Dolly Krebs tracked Vera's buys with alarm. She bought food for two, but also embalming supplies, large amounts of formaldehyde, and huge bags of salt. When Dolly gently suggested Vera talk to a doctor, Vera's reply was sharp. Owen's care is my responsibility. He doesn't need doctors upsetting him. I know what he needs. I'm the only one who knows. Dolly told her husband, who was on the county board. Something must be done, she said. A woman alone with a corpse playing house with death itself. But her husband, like others, said people had a right to privacy. Unless there was proof of a crime, the law couldn't break down a door. The sheriff was now a younger man named Luke Peterson. In the fall of 1932, Loretta tried again. She went to Sheriff Peterson with years of notes, letters, and statements. She begged him to check if Owen was alive or buried. Sheriff Peterson listened and explained the law. Without proof of a crime, without proof someone was in danger, he couldn't force his way into a home. Vera was an adult. If she wanted to pretend her dead husband was alive, that was her business. The state couldn't arrest someone for being delusional if she wasn't hurting anyone else. But she's living with a corpse, Loretta said, her voice breaking. She's sleeping next to his body. That can't be legal. The sheriff asked the county attorney. The attorney's answer was clear. Unless they had evidence Vera murdered Owen or was doing some other crime, they had no reason for a warrant. Keeping a body at home was disturbing, but not illegal if it was her husband and he died naturally. The community was too cautious to force themselves into Vera's private grief. Meanwhile, in the cabin, Vera kept her routines. She didn't care what anyone thought. Only Owen's opinion mattered. And Owen, she believed completely, approved of everything she did. The smell from the cabin grew stronger in the summer heat, a sweet, rotting smell that hung in the valley like fog. Neighbors started avoiding the path. Parents kept children away. People felt pity and disgust, but were determined to mind their own business. This let the situation continue longer than anyone would later believe possible. By the end of 1932, Vera had isolated herself and her secret completely. The people who could have helped were stopped by laws, lack of money, and a culture that respected privacy too much. Owen's body kept changing in the sealed bedroom. Vera's grip on reality kept slipping. Everything was set for 3 more years of horror that no one stopped. Subscribe right now so you don't miss what I found next, trust me. The cabin itself started to die along with Vera's mind. By 1933, the building peeled off the walls. The front porch sagged, weeds covered the garden, but the smell was the worst part. A thick, sweet odor of decay and chemicals seeped from every crack. Neighbors crossed to the other side of the path to avoid it. Vera's efforts became desperate. Owen's body, now dead nearly 5 years, was fighting her preservation. The mummification had worked at first, but time was winning. Vera worked longer each night, using more formaldehyde, wrapping and rewrapping the body. She spent almost all of Owen's army pension on preservation supplies. She ordered embalming fluid and chemicals from different cities to avoid suspicion. Postal workers noted the packages, adding to the file of worries no one acted on. Her wrapping method changed. Where skin once held, it now needed many layers of cloth to contain. Vera made a cocoon, wrapping the body from feet to head in linen strips soaked in her chemical mix. It took hours each week. She spoke to him the whole time. I know it's uncomfortable, my love, but it's keeping you safe. Once you're stronger, we won't need this. Just a little longer. The bedroom was a laboratory of death. Glass bottles lined the dresser, labeled in Vera's writing. Stacks of clean linen waited. A basin held her stained tools. The mattress was so soaked with fluids and chemicals that stuffing pushed out through holes. In July 1933, a traveling salesman named Raymond Pike stopped for directions. He knocked, and Vera appeared at a window, not the door. Her face was thin and pale, her hair dirty. She gave directions quickly, her eyes darting back inside as if worried about leaving something. What Raymond saw behind her made his blood cold. Through the open bedroom door, he saw a figure wrapped in stained cloth, propped upright in a bed. The shape was human, but completely still. Vera saw him looking and shut the curtain. Raymond reported it to the next county sheriff, but the report was filed away. By the time anyone followed up, weeks had passed. By autumn, Vera almost never left. She sent shopping lists with anyone passing by. The money she sent smelled of chemicals. One delivery man noticed every surface in the main room was covered with a fine white powder. Vera said it was lime to control moisture and smell. She didn't say the smell was so bad she had to spread lime everywhere. It burned her lungs, but was better than admitting the truth. Her hands were cracked and stained from the chemicals. Her nails were yellow. When she saw her reflection, she barely recognized herself, but it didn't matter. Only Owen mattered. That summer, she took photographs with an old camera found later in a shoebox. They showed her posing beside the wrapped figure. In some, she smiled at the camera like a normal portrait. In others, she was positioned as if talking to the cocoon. The pictures were deeply unsettling. By December, even the strongest defenders of privacy wondered if this could continue. But wondering and acting were different things. Hey, if you're still watching, you'll definitely like the rest. Subscribe. Loretta made her last try to reach her sister in March of 1934. She hadn't visited for a year, but guilt brought her back up the mountain. What she found broke something inside her forever. Vera answered after many knocks. Loretta barely knew her. Her hair was gray and matted. Her skin was yellow from chemicals, but her eyes were the worst, bright with complete belief and complete madness. Loretta, Vera said with false cheer. How wonderful. But this isn't a good time. Owen's having a difficult day. Vera, please. Loretta kept her voice soft. Let me in. Let me help. For 20 minutes, Vera blocked the door with excuses. Finally, maybe from tiredness, she stepped aside. The inside made Loretta want to run. The main room was covered with bottles and chemical containers. The smell was overwhelming. Lime powder was on the floor like snow. Furniture was pushed aside for a makeshift laboratory. Notebooks were filled with Vera's crazy writing, but the bedroom showed the true horror. The door was partly open. Loretta could see the bed with its large, wrapped shape in the center. Vera saw her looking and moved to close the door, but not before speaking about Owen as if he were just sleeping. He's doing much better lately, Vera said, her hand on the doorknob. His color is better. I've adjusted his treatments. The doctor said it would take years, but I see real progress. There were no doctors. There never had been. Loretta felt tears as she watched her sister, once smart and capable, describe a recovery that wasn't real. The wrappings need changing daily now, Vera continued, talking fast as if she'd waited years to explain. The preservation is delicate. Too much formaldehyde causes stains. Too little and the tissue breaks down. But I'm skilled. Father would be proud. Loretta tried to speak to break the delusion, but Vera was too far gone. She showed Loretta her notebooks, pages of treatment records and notes about Owen's needs. It read like a caregiver, but the patient had been dead for over 5 years. He talks to me at night, Vera whispered. Not in words, but I understand. Last week, he told me in a dream to change his shirt more often. He's becoming more aware. It's a sign he's healing. Then came the moment that would haunt Loretta forever. Vera insisted on showing her the bedroom. Before Loretta could say no, Vera opened the door wide and pointed proudly at the wrapped shape on the bed. Doesn't he look peaceful? Vera asked, putting her hand on the cocoon of stained cloth. I was about to comb his hair. Would you like to help? The shape under the wrappings was human but impossibly still. The smell in the room was undeniably death. Loretta watched in horror as Vera took a comb and stroked it over the wrapped head, humming softly. We still have our closeness, Vera said suddenly, not looking up. People think that ends when someone is sick, but it doesn't. Owen still wants me. I can feel it when I lie beside him. We're closer now than ever. Loretta fled. She made it to the porch before she was sick. Behind her, she heard Vera calling, confused and her asking why she was leaving when Owen had looked forward to her visit. Loretta walked home in a daze of tears and shock. She decided to write everything down, every detail, every witness, every store purchase. She wrote for 3 days until her hand hurt, making a record so complete no official could ignore it. In April, she gave it to Sheriff Peterson. His answer was the same, disturbing yes. No, the law needed evidence of a crime, not just proof of a broken mind. Loretta left defeated. Her sister was trapped in a nightmare and no one would help. Back in the cabin, Vera returned to her routine. She was upset by Loretta's reaction, but dismissed it. People outside didn't understand their love. Only she and Owen knew the truth. That was enough. Something Hajjadi is coming. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The autumn of 1935 was 7 years since Owen's death. In Vera's mind, it was 7 years of caregiving. She planned a special anniversary celebration. She spent weeks preparing. She sewed a new white dress like a wedding gown. She baked a cake with saved sugar and flour, decorated with dried flowers. She found candles and arranged them around the bedroom in a circle. On October 14th, Vera celebrated what she called their renewal day. She put on her white gown, washed her hair, and used makeup. In the mirror, she saw a bride ready to recommit. The ceremony was elaborate and disturbing. She propped Owen's wrapped body upright against the headboard. She arranged the wrappings to look like a suit and pinned a fabric flower to it. She set up her camera on a stack of books. The photos from that day showed a woman in a wedding dress beside a human-shaped cocoon. In some, Vera smiled with real joy. In others, she posed as if dancing with it, her arms around the wrappings. The last photo showed her sitting on the bed, her head resting against the cocoon, eyes closed in contentment. She said vows aloud in the empty cabin, promising to love and care for him. She cut the cake and put a piece on a plate beside Owen as if he might eat it. Then she ate her own piece slowly. "This is our finest moment," she told him. 7 years of devotion. You've been so patient. I'm so proud of you." Her letters from this time showed her complete break from reality. She wrote to Owen's dead mother. "Owen is feeling stronger. He sits up longer. The doctor says by spring he can take short walks. We plan to visit you." She wrote dozens of letters, never sending them, but reading them aloud to Owen. Her journal entries describe conversations with Owen as if they were real. The handwriting grew messy, the entries longer, as if writing made it more real. "Owen and I discussed children today." One entry read, "Is worried he's not strong enough to be a father, but I said we have time." The worst entries describe their physical relationship. Vera wrote about lying beside Owen, the comfort of his presence, moments of intimacy that couldn't be real. "Last night, Owen held me tenderly," she wrote. "I could feel his love. People could never understand this connection." She began writing love letters to Owen himself, reading them aloud before tucking them under his pillow. "My dearest Owen," one began, 7 years ago, I promised to stand by you forever, and I have. No matter what others say, I will never leave you. Soon you will be well, and we can begin the life we dreamed." The cabin kept rotting, but Vera didn't notice. Only the bedroom mattered, only her routines and her certainty. She had built a reality so complete nothing could break it. Every day she found new signs he was improving. Winter was harsh, but Vera barely felt cold. She had her purpose, her love, and her absolute belief. In that isolated Mount Hollow, she celebrated her 7th year of widowhood by denying she was a widow at all. The end came on a cold February morning in 1936. Vera had been burning wood constantly to heat the bedroom. She was too focused on Owen to notice the dangerous buildup of soot in the chimney. The fire started at dawn. Flames shot from the chimney top. Seen from the road, black smoke poured into the sky. The volunteer fire brigade arrived with buckets and a water cart. Vera met them in the yard, wild-eyed and panicked, but not about the fire. "You can't come in," she yelled. "You can't disturb Owen." The fire chief, Walter Kemp, tried to reason. "My house is burnt. We need to get inside. No one comes in." Vera's voice was shrill. "Owen is resting. The noise will upset his recovery. I'll handle it." But she couldn't. Walter ordered 2 men to gently hold Vera back while the rest fought the fire. Her screams followed them inside. The smell hit them immediately. Every man stopped covering their faces. This wasn't just smoke. It was the smell of something dead mixed with chemicals. Walter exchanged a look with his deputy. They'd found the secret. They put out the chimney fire quickly. The damage was small, but what they found couldn't be ignored. Walter sent a man to get the sheriff immediately. Vera collapsed in the yard, sobbing. "You don't understand. He needs me. He'll be frightened without me." Sheriff Peterson arrived within an hour with a deputy and the county coroner, Dr. Finch. Loretta came running, terrified of what they'd find. The sheriff took statements. Each fireman described the overwhelming smell, the bottles, the sealed bedroom door. Walter Kemp said he saw a human form wrapped in cloth on the bed and believed someone might be in danger. That was enough for legal grounds. Sheriff Peterson got a warrant. Loretta gave her years of documentation. Dr. Finch listened, knowing they would find something horrible. The date for the official entry was set May 12, 1936. They needed time to follow all legal steps. Vera was taken to Loretta's house to wait. She was in despair, constantly asking about Owen, insisting he would die without her care. "He needs his treatments," she told Loretta. "The wrappings must be changed." If I'm not there, he'll fall apart. All my work will be for nothing. Loretta tried to prepare her to gently say Owen was gone, but Vera's delusion was armor against the truth. In her mind, Owen was waiting, getting sicker without her. Spring came early, and with it a worse smell from the cabin. Whatever was inside had been preserved by winter cold, but was now decaying faster. On the morning of May 12th, Sheriff Peterson knocked on the cabin door. He was with his deputy, Dr. Finch, and a court recorder named Margaret Whitfield. Each had prepared for something terrible. Vera was brought back. When Vera saw the officials, she began to beg, "Please don't wake him. He had a bad night. Give him a few more hours." "I promise I'll let you see him this afternoon." The sheriff spoke gently but firmly. They had a warrant. They had to check on anyone inside. Vera dropped to her knees in the dirt, sobbing. Begged Loretta held her sister as the officials went inside. The main room was disturbing. Chemical bottles covered every surface. Lime powder coated everything. Papers were everywhere, journals, letters, photos telling the story of 7 years of delusion. Margaret Whitfield started writing everything down. The bedroom door was closed. Sheriff Peterson paused, then opened it slowly. The smell that came out made all four step back, gasping. Dr. Finch steadied himself. The bedroom was like a shrine. Burned down candles circled the bed. Bottles lined the dresser. Photos showed Vera in her white dress beside the wrapped figure. But the bed was the worst. Owen Hutchkins, or what was left of him, lay in the center. He was wrapped from head to toe in layers of stained linen, shaped like a person with arms crossed. A fabric flower was pinned to the chest. Fresh clothes were folded neatly beside the bed. Dr. Finch approached first. He touched the wrappings, feeling the stiffness underneath. "Is he alive, doctor?" The sheriff asked. "No, he's been dead for years. The body is mummified. I need to unwrap him to examine, but there's no question." And Margaret took photos of everything, the makeup supplies, the comb with hair in it, the dent in the pillow where Vera slept. The deputy found boxes of letters in the corner. Letters to Owen's dead mother, love letters to Owen under his pillow, journals describing intimacy with a corpse, the written proof of Vera's complete breakdown. Outside, Vera's screams grew louder. "Don't take him, please! He needs me! Owen, I'm here! I won't leave you!" Loretta struggled to hold her sister as they both fell to the ground. Dr. Finch began unwrapping the body. The body was largely intact, leathery but recognizable. There were no signs of foul play. Owen had died of pneumonia in 1928. The preservation had been remarkably effective. The sheriff decided not to arrest Vera. She was clearly not in her right mind. Arrangements were made to send her to Eastern Kentucky State Hospital for evaluation. The body would be examined and finally buried. As they put Vera in the sheriff's car, she fought with surprising strength. Her eyes stayed on the cabin window. Her voice was terribly clear across the valley. "I was a good wife. I never left him. He need me and I stay. Tell him I'll come back. Tell him I love him." As they drove away, her voice kept calling to her husband, still insisting on her devotion, still refusing to accept that the man she loved had been gone for 7 years and 8 months, and all her care had changed nothing but the shape of her own mind. The psychiatric evaluation of Vera Hutchkins began within hours of her arrival at Eastern Kentucky State Hospital. Dr. Samuel Cordell, the chief psychiatrist, had reviewed the case file. He understood he was dealing with something extraordinary. Vera was calm during the first interview. She explained that a terrible mistake had been made. Owen was recovering from a long illness, and her nursing had been essential. She needed to return immediately before Owen's condition got worse without her care. Dr. Cordell noted that Vera showed no awareness that her husband was dead. When he gently presented this fact using the coroner's report, Vera's response was immediate and forceful. The doctors were wrong. Owen's condition made him appear dead to those who didn't understand. She could feel his heartbeat when she lay beside him. She could sense his presence, his love, his need for her. The diagnosis took weeks. The fundamental assessment was clear. Vera had built an elaborate delusional system to avoid confronting her husband's death. That system had become more real to her than reality itself. The isolation, the lack of intervention, and her own desperate need to maintain connection had created a loop she could not escape. What disturbed Dr. Cordell most was Vera's sophistication in maintaining her delusion. She had learned preservation techniques, applied them with skill, kept detailed records that showed methodical thinking. This wasn't simple madness. This was intelligence bent entirely towards sustaining an impossible truth. The hospital staff tried various treatments over the following months. They tried rational conversation, showing Vera photographs of Owen's mummified remains, bringing Loretta to visit and reinforce reality. Nothing penetrated the delusion. Vera maintained that the hospital staff were mistaken, that Owen was waiting for her, that her absence was causing him suffering. By 1937, the doctors accepted that Vera would likely never recover. Her grip on the delusion was too strong, too essential to her psychological survival. Accepting Owen's death would mean accepting that she had spent 7 years sleeping beside a corpse. Her mind couldn't process that reality without complete collapse, so it simply refused to process it at all. Owen was buried in June of 1936 in the family cemetery on the hillside above the cabin. Vera was not permitted to attend. The service was brief. The marker placed over Owen's grave listed only his name and dates. Nothing about the 7 years his body had spent above ground in his widow's desperate embrace. The cabin was emptied and eventually torn down. No one wanted to live in a place where such horror had unfolded. Loretta took a few personal items that predated the tragedy. Everything else was destroyed. Vera spent 16 more years in Eastern Kentucky State Hospital. She never wavered in her conviction. During monthly evaluations, she consistently described Owen as recovering, waiting for her, needing her care. She spoke of him in present tense until the day she died in 1952. Her last words reportedly asking a nurse to tell Owen she would be home soon, that she hadn't abandoned him, that their love was stronger than any obstacle. Cordell's final assessment concluded that Vera Hutchkins represented an extreme case of grief-induced psychosis complicated by isolation and enabling circumstances. Had there been earlier intervention, had the community not looked away for so long, had legal systems been equipped to handle psychological emergency, the outcome might have been different. But the combination of mountain isolation, depression, era resource scarcity, and cultural reluctance to interfere had created perfect conditions for delusion to flourish unchecked. The case became a cautionary study in psychiatric literature, examining how love could twist into something unrecognizable, how devotion could become indistinguishable from madness, and how the human mind could construct elaborate fictions to avoid unbearable truth. Vera Hutchkins had been a faithful wife in the most literal and terrible sense possible. She had stayed beside her husband through everything, refusing to acknowledge that death had parted them. Her devotion had been absolute, unwavering, and completely horrifyingly wrong. The question that haunted investigators, doctors, and everyone who knew the story was simple but unanswerable. At what point had Vera's grief become madness? Had there been a single moment when reality cracked, or had it been a gradual descent so subtle that even she hadn't noticed the transition? And perhaps most disturbing, how many other isolated cabins and mountain hollows held similar secrets, hidden behind closed doors in fierce privacy, waiting to be discovered? If this story disturbed you, if it made you question the fine line between devotion and delusion, then you understand why these historical cases matter. We tell these stories not to sensationalize tragedy, but to understand the darkest capabilities of the human mind when grief and isolation combine. Hit that like button if you believe these forgotten cases deserve to be remembered. Subscribe because there are dozens more stories like this one hidden in courthouse basements and hospital archives waiting to be brought to light. The past is full of horrors that nobody wanted to see, and somebody needs to make sure we finally look. That somebody is you. That somebody is us. Don't let these stories disappear back into the dark.